When I'm recording this, the digital deluxe version of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, the remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, is out. So this is the day before the physical edition and the digital edition normal launch for everybody else. It's August 27th when I'm filming this. I want to make that clear because whenever we talk about a game, obviously there are questions of how did you get it? Did you get a review copy? I am not given review copies really for games. I make it clear when I am. I bought the digital deluxe version of this game on Xbox, but I also did buy the version physically on the PlayStation 5. Now, the reason I did that is because there are two different exclusive mini games in this game, which are actually pretty comprehensive. One is on Xbox, which is Snake vs. Bomberman, and one is on PlayStation, which is Snake vs. Monkey, which is basically Ape Escape. Now, I get into the differences between the versions and which version I believe would be the best to buy if you want to in a previous video, which I will leave in my description, that I made a few days ago regarding the platform differences and also the differences in edition. But I'm just saying that's what I did. I'm going to talk about this for a few minutes today, and like always, when it comes to your money, it's your money. I'm just telling you what I think is and is not worth it. And with Metal Gear Solid Delta, it's definitely a question, because obviously this is one of the first Metal Gear games without the involvement of Kojima at Konami. There were games before this, like Portable Ops, he didn't do a lot with. There were games like Platinum Games' Metal Gear Rising, which he didn't really do anything with. For the most part, though, the post-Kojima era at Konami, other than Metal Gear Survive, which a lot of people hated, this is the first kind of attempt to return to it. So a lot of people are asking, is this worth my money? And my answer so far has actually been yes. I do believe it is worth buying. And I'm going to get into why I believe that, the positives and the negatives around this, because there are actually negatives as well, and some of the things I was surprised to see. So if you enjoy this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, that stuff goes to help support this channel quite a bit. Clicking hype on the video if you're on phone, as silly as it sounds, does help show people the video. And I do have a question of the day for you today, which is, what game would you want to see remade in the Metal Gear series? Like before I said, you know, where do you want to see the Metal Gear series go from here? Now I'm wondering if there was another game they were going to remake, what do you want it to be? For me, last time I answered, it was the original MSX games. I still stand on that. I think you could expand that story with David Hayter, tie in Venom Snake, Big Boss, all this stuff. I think it would be very incredible, but interested to hear your thoughts down below. I have seen people incorrectly label this as a remaster. It is not a remaster. This is not operating on the same engine that the original was. It's not really using the original as a skeleton in terms of like running graphical fidelity improvements or textures or anything like that over the original. This is a rebuilt Metal Gear Solid 3, but it's actually incredibly faithful to the original. I think there are ways to frame this depending on who you are and what you want out of this game. If you're super pro Kojima, I think you can look at this and say it's very unfaithful, because you can play it with this almost over the shoulder, behind you perspective. You can have a totally different graphical filter on it that makes it look very different. I mean, in those ways, the aesthetics are not going to match the original, you know, Kojima and Fukushima game, which unfortunately he, who helped write and I believe co-direct this game in MGS2, Fukushima is often ignored as well in this process. But I also want to point out that there is an original camera angle setting where the game is kind of differently balanced. The enemies will actually react a little bit differently in that mode, which is why if you try to switch right away, you know, like on the fly, you have to reload a previous checkpoint. I believe Konami talked a little bit about this before, that there is some different enemy balancing depending on which mode you're going for. So there's either this new way to play the game, or there is the old way to play the game, and they are both here. This is not a situation like Final Fantasy VII Remake, where it's like an entirely different game, but you know, like the base characters and base plot points are the same. This is not, you know, like one of those remakes where they just remake it and they do a totally different angle, and then you can't play the original. This is one where you can choose which way you want to play the game. And partway through the game, as long as you're willing to reload the last checkpoint, you know, because of that enemy balancing, things like that, you can just switch. Like, you could play a third of this game in the new camera style, this new angle, and then you could say, I don't like that. I want to go back to the original way it was played. You can do that. I mean, there are balancing differences in general. Like, for example, the original Metal Gear Solid 3 did not have crouching, so it didn't have, like, crouch movement. It did have going prone, but not crouch movement. That was added in, actually, I believe, in the Nintendo 3DS port of the game. So there are going to be some balancing differences like that, even if you play it in that original camera style, which is called Legacy play style. But in general, I think that it's really cool to almost see two entirely different games. Now, I use that term, I guess, a little loosely, but what I mean by that is that they play differently, they have a little bit different balancing, and it's going to completely change your experience playing through the game if you decide to play it that new style, which I would argue is a little bit more in line with, like, Metal Gear Solid 5. That new style is going to be different than the original MGS3 experience. Whereas if you're an MGS3 veteran and you actually don't want that new style, you can just play through it the way you did before. I think that that's very cool. I think that adds a lot of replayability to this. I think it adds a lot of value to this. And I think in general, it's a way to show that this is a faithful attempt to recreate what the game was, while also adding new things so that it's not just borderline a remaster. You know, because obviously you could rebuild the game, but if it plays the exact same and it just looks a little different, to a lot of people, they're gonna just call that a remaster. I think it's cool to have both, and it almost makes it feel like two very entirely different ways to play MGS3. That said, I've also noticed in general that there are some performance issues with this game. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be like Digital Foundry or one of these people who's like a really, really hardcore performance-based gamer. I don't get out the FPS counter and things like that, like some people do, to measure it. But the difference between quality mode and performance mode on Xbox Series X was very noticeable. And what I've read and seen from gameplay is the same is true of PS5 and PS5 Pro. Now, in general, if you're on PC, even if this is a rocky launch, you're going to be able to brute force your way past this eventually. You know, as PCs get more powerful, people work out the kinks, all that stuff, you're able to brute force your way past performance issues. We even saw that with things like Arkham Knight. Like nowadays, Arkham Knight runs perfectly. Amazing, beautiful, buttery smooth game. But at launch, disaster. You know, and so on PC, I wouldn't be as worried about this, at least for the future. But for modern consoles, I don't understand why Konami and the Konami produced games keep having this issue. Like, I would not want to play this game in quality mode. I just found it was kind of stuttery. It didn't feel like a locked 30 FPS where it just stayed there. It felt like it would drop down into the 20s, and that was very noticeable to me. But in general, if you keep this on performance, it's probably hovering between 40 and 60 FPS. Do I wish it was more stable? Yes. But I think on performance, very playable, very enjoyable game. I just personally would not want to turn this down to quality on either playstyle, because at that point it just kind of gets stuttery and jittery, and I find that off-putting. Now, where I think this really actually benefits is the new additions to the game. Now, yes, it's a faithful remake. It actually uses the original audio for a lot of these different lines from David Hayter and all of the voice cast. It's not like a re-recording of everything. It's not a re-scripting of everything. Hell, even the censorship. Like, I thought there was going to be a ton of censorship in this game. There really isn't. Like, at least not that I can find. I mean, I'm sure somebody can find something. But, like, for example, Eva, who I always loved as a character. I thought she was great. I mean, she's interesting. She's obviously very sexy. Like, Eva in general is a character that I thought going into this, they were going to go the Capcom route, where I think Capcom and Square Enix have gone a lot more in on self-censorship. You can call that just an artistic direction, or change, but in general, it seems like certain Japanese development companies, they have been heavily influenced by the sensibilities of the West. And we're not talking sensibilities like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have this anime character who looks 10 years old wear a tiny swimsuit. We're not talking like sensibilities that probably should be common sense across the world. We're talking sensibilities like adult women, very clearly full-bodied adult women, wearing revealing clothing being seen as problematic and scaling back on that. And the reason I bring that up is like Eva, for example. That's a character I thought they were going to do that to in this game. I was like, oh, Konami's going to definitely tone that back. They didn't. I mean, even down to just straight up having the boob camera angle shots in the game, they've left it here. Like, they have gone out of their way to not alter the original visions of the game. But the ways that they did alter things are just additional. They're not taking things away. Like, for example, that new Snake versus Bomberman mode. Yeah, obviously there is the Snake versus Monkey mode, the Ape Escape mode, which was a thing, you know, back on the PS2. But like that Bomberman mode is entirely new. I thought it was a super fun side mode that added a lot to the game. It added in this call with Otacon and Mei Ling, and it tied into Solid Snake, more or less, where they kind of imply you're playing as Solid Snake in that game mode in a lot of ways, but in general, very fun. A little weird canonically, very weird side thing, but it's very fun. You know, and I kind of see it that way with all of the new things. Like, I know that there was some lists breaking down on Reddit some of these different things, so it is interesting to actually look at, you know, what those new things are. But like the fact that the enemy AI is different in that new style game mode, the fact that there are HUD shortcuts, the fact that there's entirely new animations for a lot of different things. I mean, these add a lot to the game. They're not just a retreading of the original. Like, to me, this is a game that you could buy and very clearly enjoy if you enjoyed the original, but it's also a place you could actually just jump into the Metal Gear series in general. Like, this technically could be your first Metal Gear game. Now, do I think that you benefit by having played the ones that released chronologically before this? Like Metal Gear 1, 2, and MGS 1 and 2? Yeah, I do. And I actually did full Let's Plays of those games over on my other channel, Degenerate Plays. So if you're interested in that, my friends and I play through games over there, and we've been playing through a lot of Metal Gear stuff. I'm actually planning to start playing through Delta soon over there. But in general, like, I think you do benefit from that. But in the same way that Silent Hill 2 was picked by Bloober Team and Konami as a return to Silent Hill's brand because it can operate as a standalone, Metal Gear Solid 3 can also just operate as its own game. It really is a prequel to the series, and this is a faithful prequel, but also one that has not just a fresh coat of paint, but entirely fresh new ways to play it, where enemies act and react differently if you're playing it in that new style. It doesn't edit and censor a bunch of stuff. It doesn't, like, you know, do what a lot of Japanese development companies have done with the female form and, like, distance themselves from it and be afraid of it. It doesn't compromise the original vision. I mean, even if you don't like the way that the graphics look now, which is understandable, they made the original version available on the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection. So they even went out of their way to release an actual, like, the original game. They actually did add in filters where if you want it to look more like the original style, like in terms of lighting and stuff, you can. Like, I think the Legacy filter makes this game look the best. Even on the new play style, even on the new camera angle, I think the Legacy filter makes it look the best. Now, there are things here that, you know, like I said, are negatives. I point out the performance. That shouldn't be an issue anymore. I do want to add that I think, in general, there are some things added in that could have been a lot better. Like, for example, the photo mode. Kind of terrible. It's better than nothing. Like, if you want to get shots of cutscenes or things like that, but, like, you can't really pose characters, at least that I can find. It's just very, very bare bones. I feel like that could have been a lot better. I think that that's something I hope that they fix or add on to, because it's just not good. But that would be something, too, that's kind of a negative. Like, it's an additional thing. It's still here. It's new, but it's not very good. One thing to mention is the graphical style in general is not going to be for everybody. You know, it's not as cartoony or anime as it once was, and I can see why that would appeal less to some people than others. I think it's just different, but in general, some people aren't going to like that. I could see the faithfulness of this game actually being off-putting to a few people who played the original so many times. Maybe you're sick of the story. This doesn't add a ton of new story elements that are going to really add on to the game. So obviously, if you're like sick of Metal Gear Solid 3, this is not an entry for you. But I think for everybody else, it's a very solid entry. It's a solid return to form. It respects both styles. The original game is still made available for people even on modern hardware, while they can still play this game, and they can even play this game the way the original was played in terms of camera style and things like that. I'm overall very impressed with the game. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you like this game? Do you think it looks worth buying? Do you find it worth buying, like when you play it? I'm interested to hear all of those comments down below. The answer to the question of the day, what Metal Gear game you would want to see remade. Also, as well, if you want to support this channel, you can use our Fortnite code DJAY123. That goes to help support us a lot. And, you know, if you are a unique individual, someone who likes to surround yourself with unique one-of-a-kind things, we have our own store, cosmobunny.shop. Coasters, keychains, trays, and more one-of-a-kind made out of repurposed paper from damaged books, from manga, magazines, and more. What we do is we take that paper from these damaged books, transform it into a new medium by making new resin pieces out of it, and then recycle the rest. You can use code DJAY123 for 10% off your first purchase over there. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shway.